Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Thank you for taking the time to come and be part of TEDx Noah Libraries 2020. All around our region and state, across the country and around the globe, people just like you and me are hungry for ideas and information. We all want to know more, to imagine, and to understand. And TEDx events are organized to provide opportunities to connect us with ideas worth spreading. The TED organization has granted a license allowing Snow Libraries to independently organize this local TEDx event. Because at its core, your public library is all about providing you access to ideas and information. We've worked with some amazing individuals from our region to share some of these ideas with you. Now, the really hard work to make this happen has come from each featured speaker and all those who've worked behind the scenes. So we invite you to sit back and imagine you are sitting in the largest theater ever. In this virtual space, we are choosing to be safe, exercising our social distance, and other members of the audience are also choosing to be present. We are all expectant, ready to think deeply, and we are reimagining the quantum connections between ideas and realities. And now, on with the show.
Welcome to TEDx Noah Libraries 2020. I'm your host, Phil Klein, and in this online event, we'll be premiering a TEDx talk and holding a conversation with the speakers to dig deeper into their ideas for greater understanding. With me are also a team of moderators and a co-host to provide any support we may need. Thank you for taking the time to be with us and to explore these ideas worth spreading. Throughout this hour, you are invited to ask questions in the comments section of the Zoom webinar on YouTube Live or Facebook Live, wherever you may be. We do hope to respond to as many of those as possible. And if something strikes or inspires you, please also feel free to share that as well. I'm here today with Rob and Janet, who are two individuals who've experienced significant changes to their brains. And they're here to share with us a little bit about what is life like for them. Rob, Janet, welcome. It's so great to be with you today.
So good to be here, Phil.
Yay. So Janet, can you tell us a little about why you wanted to give this talk?
I've been living with a brain injury for 21 years now and worked with hundreds and hundreds of people who live with brain injury. And anything I can do to help people who haven't lived through this understand what it's like, or to provide support to people who are living with this today, it's just a great use of my time and energy, and really honored to be able to do this.
Thank you. And Rob, can you tell us a little about why you wanted to give a talk?
Thank you, Phil. I wanted to give a TED talk because I have found that many people who I encounter see me and they don't understand that I have a disability. It's like invisible disability. It's like I look okay, and people think, "Oh, you must be okay." But um, I really appreciate people taking the time to hear and understand what each person is going through.
Thank you, Rob. I often refer to the TEDx audience as an audience of power listeners because they specialize in deep listening. So, to our audience, I'll just let you know that Rob and Janet are extraordinarily wonderful people. I've had the privilege of spending a number of hours with them, getting to know them and understand their stories and experiences. And you're in for a real treat as we listen to their TEDx talk. Let's go ahead and roll that now. What is a brain and what is a mind? People may often quickly think that the mind is what the brain does. But when you dig deeper, the mind, as Dan Siegel describes it and defines it, is an embodied relational process that regulates the flow of energy and information. And with that definition of our mind, we remember that our mind, as connected to our brain, is in a body and is experienced and expressed in our relationships. And I'm here joined with Rob and Janet, who are two people who have experienced significant changes in their brains. And those have had an impact on all aspects of how their minds work in the world. And what we're here to do is to have a conversation with them about what their experience is and what we can do as people who may not have had those kind of changes to understand and relate better to the kind of experiences that people who have had changed brains experience. So let me start by asking you, Janet, can you tell us a little bit what it's like to experience mind and your brain from your perspective?
Phil, I love this question because as a person that lives with a brain injury and has lived with a brain injury for 21 years now, I often think about the difference between this organ that sits here in my skull and has certain functions to keep me going, and my mind. And living with this brain injury has made it very clear that they're two different things. I'd like to say that early on in my brain injury, I did not know this. And I had the experience of waking up one day with the brain that I knew and loved and that worked very well and suited me and eased my way through life, having a couple injuries in a month, actually. But in the twinkling of an eye, the organ of the brain stopped working in any way that was familiar to me. More than that, it was injured. It was broken in some ways. And so the part of me that I relied on to think problems through could no longer think problems through. If I had lost an arm in an accident, my brain processes and my mind, Phil, would help me strategize and think logically through ways to adapt life without an arm. when the brain, and probably the part of myself that I most identified with, was the part that was injured. I was not able to do that. And that is when I started having to reach out to the entirety of me and my community in that relational sense to understand that this deeper sense of mind was needed to step in and do what my injured brain would no longer do.
It's as if perhaps in some way the mind grew to help heal your brain.
Phil, exactly. And as people who live with brain injury, we learn that both the function of the brain, also, it's such a difficult topic to talk about, Phil. It's so nebulous. But let me say this. Other parts of ourselves, our hearts, step forward to see us through our journey. We invite other people to become our allies and to step in and do functions that our brains won't do anymore. We have to learn to think of ourselves in new ways, because if all I am is this, if my whole identity comes from this, I can't remember how much the brain weighs, but this organ in my head, I tell you, that's a pretty small identity. The mind is a vast identity. The heart is our strongest and most beautiful resource. And we live among allies that will share the load and walk with us in our healing if we can connect with them and allow them to do that.
And part of that connecting, Janet, starts with understanding.
Yes.
And I'd like if you could share a little about how you experience time.
One way that many of us are affected is that time, I am not able to understand time in the way I did before and in the way I think our culture functions. Calendars have no meaning for me, that today is Saturday or Tuesday, or that it's 1:30 in the morning or 12:30 in the afternoon. My brain is not able to, on its own, manage those concepts.
So you're putting attention on the idea that it takes energy and effort to use these brains that we have. And Rob, can you share a little bit about your story and what it's like for you to use your brain and your mind?
Like, there was a game in the 80s like called Boggle, and you'd mix up the pieces and you'd spell them out, and the blocks would spell a word. And in my brain, I think that I might know that I want to do 10 things today, and in my experience, the boggle of the brain part is like, well, what the heck? Why did I put these 10 things down on my list today? These 10 things are completely ridiculous. I would never be able to do all 10 of these things in the same day. So frequently, I have, in my experience, I have come to terms with the fact that I frequently look to a person without a brain change. I'll look to my wife and I'll say, my wife's name is Becky, and I'll say, excuse me, Becky, will you please look at my task list and see these things are reasonable for me to do, and I'll get her opinion to see if they're reasonable things to do, and then I'll do them if they're reasonable.
Thank you. And so, Janet, can I ask you what helps other people to become better allies?
I would say empathy and compassion and desire. And I have noticed there are some people that I've known for many years preceding my brain injury that simply aren't able to put themselves in my position and see the world through my eyes. And I understand that. They remain beloved and wonderful. There are some people that meet me in an instant and are able to see how things might be for me. And, I don't know what the difference is in people. Curiosity to understand, asking questions, listening deeply, listening past the words, imagining what it might be if you didn't understand the calendar, for example, which is a hard thing to manage or to even imagine if you don't have a brain injury. Exquisite sensitivity to someone else's needs, which is a big ask in our busy world. I think the biggest thing, slowing down. I need for people to slow things down for me on a fairly regular basis. If I'm on the phone, let's say with some government office and I'm trying to get information, they will rattle along so quickly that I can't understand. So, asking people to slow down, people's willingness.
Rob, I'd like to ask you, what do you want other people to understand about having a brain injury?
I would definitely want to share that patience and perseverance are probably the two things. Like patience, because there are days where I'm not sure what I wish to do, and perseverance because it requires a lot of new energy, new effort to do tasks that I used to do all the time. So I think I definitely think that if I met someone who had a new brain injury, I would wish for them patience and perseverance, because it'll take so much effort to do the things that you think you used to do so easily. So patience and perseverance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Janet, you mentioned this a little bit, but I wanted to see if you had any more that you wanted to say about how a brain injury is different from other kinds of injuries.
When our brains are injured, we lose the part of ourselves that is able to observe ourselves and tell what's going on. And again, this is my brain injury, and I've heard a lot of people talk about this. Many of us lose the part of ourselves that is able to do things in sequence. And so if we would think about almost anything we do in our lives, cooking, for example, I would say it took me 10 years, but maybe longer, to really be able to cook again. There's a decision to make, what to cook. There's a scheduling thing, when to cook, when to have enough time to cook. There's an ingredient list, how to get all the ingredients in line, in the house, in the kitchen at one time. For years, that would take me 5 or 6 trips to the grocery store. Even, I'm a list maker too, like Rob. Even with a list, my eyes would skip over items and I would go back in again and again, so that by the time I got the last necessary ingredient, the first ingredient was rotten, right? No good anymore. Being able to follow the written directions in the right order, step 1, step 2, step 3. So tasks that we might have learned in grade school when my mom started teaching me to cook are almost unachievable. And so the example that I used earlier and that I'll use now, if I lose my right arm and I'm right-handed, I might have to learn to cook again with a prosthetic, right? So there's the learning of the moving, the managing of the prosthetic, or starting to work with my left hand, letting my left hand become dominant. And I don't want to minimize how challenging that might be, but my brain is able to strategize pretty easily how to do those things. It's a different level of challenge and complication.
And Rob, for you, how can others relate to you in a way that is supportive?
So today, what I try to live by is I try to treat every person that I interact with. I try to treat them as if this person may have a changed brain and they may need me to speak slowly and clearly and allow them to comprehend what I'm saying. So that is the thing that I would most want to request other people to do. Please be slow and clear and understanding when speaking with others.
Thank you, Rob. And so, Janet, let me ask you, for someone who may be newly experiencing a brain injury themselves or have a family member recently affected, what would you want them to know or to hear?
There are several things that I wish I had heard when my brain was first injured. Number 1, support groups are amazing. Peer support, spending time with others who have gone through this experience. It's one of the things that's really helped me survive and to grow. Describing my brain injury or talking about what the last month has been like in a room full of people that live with brain injury, I look around the room and they're all nodding. There's compassion just shining through their faces. They are sending me nonverbal encouragement, and I am held and valued. And if there's not a support group in your area, find someone, your doctor or one of the therapists you're seeing, the Brain Injury Association of your state will be able to connect you with someone who has a brain injury that can talk to you so you get that kind of unconditional understanding. Number 2, I would say keep, like early on, get every bit as much therapy as you can get, because the therapies that I got really helped me recover a lot of function in my brain. 3, time is an amazing ally of our brains. because our brains are geared towards being, it's called neuroplastic, right? To doing rewiring on their own. And then there's all kinds of things we can do to help them rewire. Finally, don't listen to people who tell you that where you are is as far as you're going to go, because it's simply not true. You know, as human beings and as brains, we keep changing. And my experience with myself and others is I keep getting better at living with a brain injury. My brain is rewiring. I am discovering new adaptive skills all the time.
Thank you. And Rob, what would you say to someone who may recently have had a brain injury?
Please be very patient and understanding of yourself and of the people who you interact with, because I know that you understand that you have a changed brain, and please be understanding that not everyone in the world will comprehend that you have a changed brain. So I would recommend please proceed through your life very patient and understanding.
Janet, what can the rest of us do if we don't either know or understand?
I would love to ask people to pay a little more attention and to be curious, because I am often weaving and wobbling, I mean, in a pretty dramatic way. And I'm sometimes reluctant to ask for help. It might be embarrassing, or maybe just one too many things to do. And so if someone can just extend a simple kindness, like extending an arm that I could take so that I can stabilize myself a little bit. And then I think also, and it is to extend the generosity that we would each hope to experience from each other, of a willingness to enter my world, try on my hat for just a little while and see what the world might look like to me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rob, Janet. That was heart-opening and mind-opening, and hopefully brain-activating for all of us. Rob, what was it like for you to see the video, and what are you thinking now?
Good question, Phil. Thank you for asking. I watched the video, and I do appreciate everything that we said, and I recall those days, and I remember that it was like relearning how to experience life with a changed brain.
Thank you. And Janet, tell us what it was like for you to re-experience or to see that talk.
Well, first, I'm hugely relieved, and I loved it. It was just it touched my heart, and my memory kind of lives in pieces, and I have to find pathways into to have much of a whole sense of things. And so I don't remember a whole lot of what we said, but watching it really brought back the great conversations we've had, Phil.
And Rob, can you tell us a little what it would be like if we could put your hat on and see through your eyes?
Yes, Phil, great question. Things that I have learned that I think it would be, I think things that would be good for another person to be able to experience if they could put on my hat is possibly, I think I would appreciate a person experiencing how challenging every little thing through the day is. Like things I used to think were so easy now are I'm really challenging. I plan my day very thoroughly in ways that are like so detailed. I never would have used to plan on a day. Like I would plan every half hour of the day and make sure I have time to get the laundry, have time to get a drink, stuff like that. Things, they seem so ridiculous, but those are the things that I would want somebody to understand about having a changed brain.
Rob, you and for our audience, so much of what you describe, involves experiences that were really challenging. And when you first had your brain injury, you had the experience of having difficulty recognizing your home. We have a short video clip of an interview where you shared a little bit about that. Maybe we could show that now and see if that will be another window for our audience.
When my injury had happened 3 years ago, my wife had me taken to Craig Hospital in Denver, Colorado, and when I was done at Craig and came back to Seattle, I didn't remember what my house was, and my wife pulled up in front of the house and said, "Well, this is our house." And I looked at it and I thought, I don't recognize this house at all. And we walked inside, and I had to reacquaint everything in my memory, because it was like the house was slightly familiar to me, but my memory was totally messed up. And my experience was, well, I think I've been here before, but I don't remember where anything is.
Wow. So your accident and your injury and that first readjusting, Rob, must have been really strange and difficult. Is there anything you want to comment about that?
Excellent question, Phil. Thank you for asking. I remember it took me several weeks getting reacquainted with my house. That was one thing, and the other thing was I used to ride my bicycle everywhere. Like instead of having a car, I would ride my bicycle all around Seattle, and so I wanted to see if I still knew how to balance a bicycle. And the thing that was interesting in my experience was that after having changed brain, I found I was still able to balance a bicycle. And the thing that was most interesting to me was that if balancing a bicycle was the only thing I was focused on, I could balance a bicycle great. But one day I was riding my bicycle. I thought I was on a safe bicycle ride, and I was riding on a safe path, and I was approaching a street crossing, so I thought I'm going to be really careful when I get to the street crossing. And then another person was walking the other direction. So my brain was processing, I'm going to stop at the street. I'm going to be aware that there's a person walking the other way. And it was like there was too many things that were competing for my comprehension that all of a sudden I forgot how to balance a bicycle. I tipped over my bicycle and I fell on the ground. And luckily I had a safe helmet on and I didn't get injured. But it was still interesting to me. It was like my brain can only process so many things at one time. Like I can think about balancing a bicycle, or I can think about approaching a road and having to stop and being aware that someone's walking the other direction. There's like competing comprehension things.
Yes, you've mentioned the cognitive load and making sure that gets managed. I think we'll come back to that. Janet, I know that you've spoken a little bit in your talk about how your mind expanded a little bit. And we have a short clip about what that experience is like. And you talk about how the mind relates to your brain. And let's talk a little bit about how that expands. And can we roll that next clip, please?
My entire home is an extension of my brain. And actually, other people become an extension of my brain. That's one of the most amazing things about brains, is that they can extend past this organ. And so everything is always in the same place, just in such a strict way. And there are certain routines that if I don't do them in the right order every day, everything falls apart. And there are parts of my brain that have recovered and parts haven't. And as long as I work with the parts that haven't, I do pretty well.
Mm-hmm. This reminds me, Janet, that in my view, we've experienced our having a brain like, oh, great, we've all developed a big brain and it's expanded. But it can also feel like our brains are like Swiss cheese with little holes in them.
Yes.
And gaps, and whether it's needing to do one thing at a time, like Rob says, or making sure that you do things in a specific way, like you say, and leaning towards a wider group of people to support you, or to other things like your home, is part of being held in a broader community. Is there any more you can say about that, Janet, about how your brain extends into the world, or how doing things sequentially really helps?
Yeah, a couple things, Phil. And I've started using, after these conversations with Rob, I've started using his language. I was really worried I was going to forget to be here today, which would have been a big forget, right? And I really wanted to be here. And so yesterday I reached out to my dear friend Cindy and just said, could you possibly call me at 8 and remind me I have this thing going? And I also said, so I said, can I borrow your brain? And I also thought to say, do you have enough brain power to lend me a little of yours? And you know what? Given our conversations, I'm actually doing more and more of that. And it feels great. Then also with COVID and my work changing kind of overnight, and it all is happening here right now, I rearranged my office, including the bookshelves behind me, so that it would look good, right? But I have to tell you, that little bit of rearranging, what are we, 4 months past that? I'm still completely confused in my office. And so I haven't had the time to get systems in the office back in place to operate as good as they were before. And I'll get there. It's just, it takes so much effort, and something small like that wouldn't throw someone else has thrown a big wrench for me.
Yeah. So, you're reminding me that if we grew up without other people, boy, we would never have learned language. We would not have
Yes.
any stores or ability to exchange things that we needed. So in very real ways, we're depending on each other's brains every day and in every way.
Yes.
So it's beautiful how you're calling attention to this everyday fact in a new light and really helping us to see how important it is when it can be easily something we forget. If, like you may have in school learned that, we only have our own minds and should always only think for ourselves. In truth, maybe we think more together than we realize.
Yes.
We'd like to turn to audience questions next, but first, let's look at a short clip now where Rob shares about what it's like to experience cognitive overload and how we can better understand that.
I want them to know that they think they understand what I'm referring to, and I'll wake up and I'll think, I'll say, oh, I had such a cognitive overwhelming morning. It's like I'm cognitively exhausted, and the person would say, oh yeah, that happens to me all the time. I'm really cognitive tired because I did a puzzle this morning, and I'll think it's nothing. It's not like what you experience. It's different. So what I really want is I want that person, and I want every person to hear my point of view, and like Janet said, believe me if I'm describing an experience that I just had, that maybe I had an experience that was cognitively overwhelming to me. I want a person to listen to me and believe me and trust me, because the person might think, oh, that happened to me all the time, but it's not the same. So I want the people to trust me and hear my experience and believe it. That's what I want people to understand.
Trust me, hear my experience, and believe it. Those are words to live by. And I really get it, Rob. And the wider point may be that as humans, we're accustomed to relating to different kinds of creatures every day. We relate to our older relatives. If you have a grandparent, you might relate to them a little differently, and you adjust and connect to them. Children, or even animals, or various different friends, each of them we tune into. And I think you're really shining a light on how when people have had a brain injury, we need to put attention on tuning into them as well. Thank you so much for that. I want to turn to some of the comments and questions. I'm going to start with this comment for both of you from David in Zoom. Says, thank you for opening up and sharing. Your positive attitude is inspiring. Keep on keeping on. We get a question here, also from Casey in Zoom. Can you recall what life is like before having a brain injury? And what are your superpowers now that you do have a brain injury? And let's see, Janet, would you go first? And then Rob, we'll hear from you.
Yeah. I love the question. And I want to tell you that I remember vividly what my life was like before my brain injury. And most mornings I wake up and don't know that I have a brain injury. And it may be some period of time into the day that I, kind of startlingly remember. And I loved that life. And I sometimes have the sense that that other Janet is kind of walking on a parallel path with me. And I know what she'd be doing right now. And honestly, I'm kind of jealous of her. And my superpower, I'll tell you something startling that's happened to me with my brain injury is I discovered yoga as I did yoga earlier, but I rediscovered it about 10 years into my injury. And we've actually started a brain injury program, a brain injury yoga program here in Seattle. I became a yoga teacher, and the person I was before would have laughed at the idea because I don't look like a yoga teacher. I don't move like a yoga teacher. I'm not bendy like a yoga teacher is. I teach yoga every week to people who live with chronic health conditions and people who live with brain injury. And I want to say it is one of the best things I've ever done. And then we've also created an organization to work with people who have brain injury. And that is something that's happened far beyond what this brain is capable of doing. It's that ability of connecting and allowing others to be our allies, as I said earlier. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you for turning your challenges into gifts for many people. We all have to undergo significant hardships at one way or at one point in our lives, and to find a way to do that gracefully is really one of the great arts of being a human. Rob, do you have any thoughts on what your recollection was of life before your brain injury and any superpower you may feel you have now that you have one?
Thank you for asking, Phil. My recollection of my life before brain injury seemed very, very, very able and very capable of going around and doing a bunch of things like going on long bike ride by myself, doing anything I want. I used to be able to drive a car. And post brain injury, things that I have really tried to turn into my superpower are making a list, like having a list of everything that I'm intending on doing, so I know there's enough time in the day, and so that I know I have the correct tools if I'm going to work on a project.
That's great. And Rob, I want to ask one more question. Let's see here. It's George in Zoom asks, Leah on Zoom asks, Rob, what is something that is new and different since your injury that you're grateful for?
New since my injury that I'm grateful for, I think the thing I'm most grateful for is the people who I've met. I think through the programs that Janet Novinger has, and through yoga and through support group and things like that. I really appreciate the friendships I have with people from those groups.
Thank you. And Janet, there are really so many questions here. And if both of you want to answer this is fine too. How has gratitude and positive thinking played a role in your healing?
I feel lucky in some ways that my personality bends towards the positive, and it bends towards happiness and towards being grateful. And so I didn't have to work too hard at that. And it's played a huge role in my creating a great life for myself. And it is something that I really nurture every day. And in fact, my mom and I write emails to each other at the end of every day. And one of the practices that we've started in the last year or two is that we say one thing that we're grateful for on this day. And that has just enriched my life so much. And there's something about sharing it with another person and writing it down that has just been huge for me. So thanks, Mom.
And Rob, what role has positive thinking and gratitude played in your healing?
Thank you for the question, Phil. I think that positive thinking has allowed me when like a year after we returned to Seattle, I felt so appreciative of the people who I met through Janet Novinger's support groups and through community support groups that I started offering all my friends in those groups. I started offering them that I would give them a tune-up of their bicycle, because I used to be a professional bicycle mechanic years ago, and so I really appreciate having new friends and assisting my new friends with tune-ups of their bicycles.
Thank you. That's great. And we still have a lot more questions. I'll just try and keep them flowing. Maria from Zoom asks, how do you let people without a brain injury know when you have cognitive overload? Is this easy to do? Does it depend on who you are telling? And can you feel the cognitive overload limit happening before it's too much? What do you do when you have cognitive overload? It's a lot of questions rolled into one. Which of you would like to answer that? Just go ahead and you can just go ahead and start. Go ahead, Rob.
Very good question. Thank you for asking. In my experience, sometimes when I'm with people and I'm experiencing a cognitive overwhelm, I'll sit back and I'll put up my finger and try to say, I'll try to express to people, like, give me a minute, just give me a minute, I'm catching up, and I'll just say, just please wait a minute, and then usually after a minute, I'll usually be able to come out of it. That's my experience.
Janet, do you have a thought on this too?
You know, I can't remember all the parts of the question. There's a couple
just really about cognitive overload, yes, and how you manage it and communicate it.
Yeah. Number one, I take exquisitely good care of myself. And so I build in a lot of rest and, eat well and exercise, do yoga. So I try to stay on the right side of cognitive overload. And even so, most days, it's like a sundowning effect that we talk about with Alzheimer's. I can kind of count on my cognitive function getting worse the later in the day it gets. And anytime from 6 to 7 on, you probably don't want to be around me. I'm going to be pretty grumpy and maybe kind of snappy. And it can happen in an instant. Something can enter my field of vision at the wrong angle. There can be too much stimulation in the environment, too much noise, too much light, too much movement. And it can be like a door slamming shut. And I can't predict that. And I can't, I don't even get a moment's warning. And I really try to get away and not do any harm. That's my sense. But I've been known to snap at people, to swear, to be quite ungraceful in just needing it all to stop and needing to protect my brain.
And so there's maybe a recovery that you need to do to get back to cognitive flow.
Yeah. And Phil, it can be anywhere from a few minutes to a couple days, depending on how serious it is. And you just never know. It's kind of an unpredictable element.
Suzanne on Zoom comments, hello, and you are both amazing. I would ask what each of you do to keep your brains moving and evolving. And we love you, Rob, she says. What do you do to keep your brains moving and evolving? We should have little buzzers so you could choose which one of you goes first.
Rob, do you want me to go to give you a minute? Is that okay? Like I think even without a brain injury, I would have been doing this. And with a brain injury, it's essential. I mentioned the exquisite self-care. I really take good care of my brain. I'm always learning something new. I just completed 500 hours of the yoga teacher training to be able to teach. And I've been asking, what am I going to do when I'm 85, right? What new thing am I going to learn? I practice yoga every day. I do spiritual reading in the morning and then a quiet time of prayer and reflection. And those are things that bring real stability and really pay attention to the health of my whole self, my brain, my spirit, my heart, my relationships. I'm always thinking about those things.
Wow, I think that's a model we could all hope to follow. Rob, do you have thoughts about what keeps your brain moving and evolving, your mind?
In my experience, things that keep me going through days. I've been trying to read. I haven't been an exceptional reader for my whole life. Like I know how to read, but it would be rare for me to sit down with a book. I have a book, and I'm trying to read books. So reading is one thing I'm trying to do, and physical exercise. I focused on that 3 days a week, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, physical exercise, and
And you mentioned weightlifting to me earlier, and not just for 5 minutes. I think you weightlift for how long do you weightlift for when you do a workout?
Thank you for asking, Phil. Initially, I thought I would do 1 hour Monday, 1 hour Wednesday, 1 hour Friday, but currently it's close, almost 2 hours, 3 times a week. So like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours.
That's great. That's a wonderful model, I think, for everyone. A couple more comments. First, there's this comment and then a question. Anne and Parviz from Zoom share, thank you, dear Rob and Janet. I am committed to being more compassionate, understanding, patient, and trusting because you have both inspired me and touched my heart. Oh. Big hugs. Love you so much.
Thank you.
We also have a question. This is from Sherry from Zoom, who asks, what resources are there for families who want to support someone who has a brain injury? I think there may be some links that we add at the end here, but go ahead.
So in some ways, not enough and ever growing. Look towards your state and the national brain injury associations and alliances as really good sources for resources. And then I want to say a little organization like ours that's really just getting born, the Imaginal Network. We are really good at linking people to the right resources. And so you're always willing to, we're always happy for people to reach out to us, Imaginal.network, and to kind of, with the experience we've had, guide you to resources that we know will be helpful to you.
And I'd like to maybe shift, as we're getting closer to the end of our time, to what each of you imagine for the world and for the ways people can relate to one another. Rob, how would you like to see us relate to one another, and what do you see in a world where those dreams come true?
Good question, Phil. Thank you for asking. In my experience, I think that it's similar to what I have said before. It's like I would want people to be very patient and understanding, and like you don't know what someone else's experience is like, so just try to listen and hear and appreciate their experience and appreciate it. Don't try to say, oh, that happens to me all the time. Just try to listen to people with your brain and listen to people with your heart.
Thank you. And Janet, what last words would you like to leave us with, our vision for our future?
Yeah. There are people like Rob and me that are not finding the right places to share our gifts, and that are kind of getting left out of the conversation. And my work with hundreds of people with brain injuries have let me know that there are so many gifts that we have to share. And so we would ask that for us, and that for all people whose abilities are different, that there be a space in the workplace and in the greater community for us to share our gifts with you.
Thank you so much. Janet, Rob, it has been an utter privilege and a pleasure to spend this time together with you. Thank you for bringing all of your gifts here, and we hope to see them continue to be spread from here on after. This is Phil Klein for TEDx Snow Owl Libraries saying thank you and have a great day.
TEDx Snow Owl Libraries 2020 has been made possible through the generous support of corporate and community-based organizations who believe in the power of ideas and information. We'd like to thank these organizations for partnering with us. Coastal Community Bank, serving the financial needs of customers throughout Western Washington. Coastal Community Bank, where community is not just their middle name, it's how they do business. Community Transit of Snohomish County, providing public transportation alternatives and solutions which help people get from where they are to where they want to be. Overdrive, always innovating to help libraries transform by providing digital content such as ebooks, audiobooks, magazines, and video for public libraries. Washington Energy Services, providing heating, cooling, and other service solutions to help Puget Sound residents save energy and live better. And our founding partner, the Snow Owl Libraries Foundation, committed to mobilizing people and resources to expand the reach of Snow Owl Library services, promote civic engagement, and foster a lifetime of learning.